Airports in 2026 look familiar on the outside, but something has changed beneath the surface. Quiet rule updates, stricter automated systems, and earlier cutoffs are now catching travelers off guard in ways that never happened a few years ago. People still walk through the terminal with old habits, assuming everything works the way it always has, while the airport around them has become far less forgiving. A check-in window closes sooner than expected, a boarding pass fails at the last moment, or a simple mistake at security suddenly brings the entire line to a stop. None of these moments feel dramatic until they happen to you, and by then it is already too late to fix. In this video, we break down the airport mistakes in 2026 that travelers must avoid if they want to keep their trip from falling apart. Mistake 1. The check-in cutoff trap. One of the most damaging mistakes travelers still make in 2026 happens before they even reach the security line. It begins the moment someone decides not to check in online, believing they can simply handle everything at the counter like they did years ago. But airports now rely on strict, automated systems that enforce exact cutoff times. International flights typically close check-in 1 hour before departure, while domestic flights close around 45 minutes. Once that cutoff hits, the system locks instantly and no agent can override it, even if the traveler has been waiting in line. Many people only discover this when the agent turns the screen around and explains that the flight is already closed, even though the plane is still sitting at the gate. This problem became even more common when airlines quietly tightened deadlines with little public notice. United shifted its domestic cutoff from 30 minutes to 45, leaving countless travelers stranded because they relied on outdated rules. And arriving at the counter with a carry-on creates a second risk. Agents are measuring bags more aggressively, and even half an inch outside the limit can force travelers to check their suitcase, increasing the chances of delays or lost luggage. In 2026, online check-in is no longer a convenience. It is the only safeguard against a system that does not wait. Mistake 2. The digital boarding pass failure. Even travelers who check in online often run into a second problem in 2026, depending entirely on their digital boarding pass. Phones feel reliable until the moment they aren't. Batteries drain faster under airport Wi-Fi, screens freeze at random, and automatic updates seem to trigger at the worst possible times. With more airports switching to automated boarding gates, a single glitch can stop a traveler at the front of the line with no way to prove they belong on the flight. It is a small moment that quickly becomes stressful, especially when boarding groups move fast and overhead bin space disappears almost instantly. I experienced this firsthand on a long flight from Bangkok to the United States. Just as my zone was called, my phone suddenly restarted for an unexpected update. One moment I had everything ready, and the next I was standing at the gate unable to load my boarding pass while passengers kept walking past me. The only reason I boarded smoothly was because I had printed a physical copy earlier without thinking much of it. That simple piece of paper saved me from losing my boarding group and dealing with unnecessary chaos. In 2026, having both versions is no longer old-fashioned. It is a smart backup that prevents a minor technical issue from destroying a carefully planned trip. Mistake 3. The boarding pass photo risk. Another mistake that continues to put travelers at risk in 2026 happens long before they board the plane. Many people still celebrate their trip by posting a photo of their boarding pass online, believing that blurring their name or covering a small section makes it safe. What they do not realize is that the real danger is hidden inside the barcode. A simple scan of that code can reveal a traveler's full name, frequent flyer number, itinerary, and in some cases, even partial passport-linked details, because airline systems now sync more information automatically than before. Scammers do not need the physical ticket. They only need the image that someone uploaded without thinking twice. It gets worse. Posting a boarding pass also tells the world exactly when you are not home. Criminal groups in 2026 use automated tools to search for travel posts, turning what feels like a harmless moment of excitement into a signal that your house is temporarily empty. Many travelers never consider this until something goes wrong, and by then it is too late to undo what was shared. For these reasons, The safest approach in 2026 is simple. Do not post your boarding pass in any form, blurred or cropped or partially hidden. What seems like a small detail can expose far more than most people expect, and the consequences often reach far beyond the airport. Mistake 4. The liquid rule mistake. Despite all the changes happening in airports, one rule remains stubbornly in place in 2026, and travelers continue to underestimate how strictly it is enforced. The TSA's liquid rule has not disappeared, even though many people assume newer scanners have replaced the old requirements. Liquids, gels, and aerosols must still be 3.4 ounces or less and packed into a clear, quart-sized bag. The mistake occurs when travelers forget to keep this bag accessible. Instead of placing it in an outer pocket or somewhere easy to reach, they bury it at the bottom of their backpack or suitcase, believing they will deal with it later. That moment arrives when they reach the security line and suddenly everything stops. They open their bag, dig through their belongings, pull out clothing and electronics, and hold up the entire line while trying to find the small plastic bag they should have prepared earlier. Security officers move quickly in 2026, and any delay caused by slow preparation often triggers additional screening, which only increases stress for everyone involved. The truth is that this rule has stayed consistent because it remains effective. And while newer scanners are being introduced, they are not available everywhere, meaning travelers must still be prepared for the traditional process. Keeping your liquids bag in an easy-to-reach spot is a simple habit that prevents unnecessary delays and keeps your time at security smooth and predictable. Mistake 5. The gate location oversight. Another mistake that continues to frustrate travelers in 2026 happens right after they clear security, when the sense of relief makes them believe they finally have time to relax. Many people assume their gate will be easy to find later, so they head straight for food, a lounge, or a charging outlet without actually confirming where their flight departs. This feels harmless until they discover that airports today are far more spread out than they appear on the map. Gates that look close together are often located in completely different wings, separated by long walkways, escalators, tunnels, or even shuttle buses. I learned this lesson firsthand after passing through security and assuming I understood the terminal layout. My gate number looked close to another, so I took my time, only to find out later that it was located in a section accessible only by a shuttle bus that departed infrequently. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already rushing across the terminal with no idea if I would make it in time. This is the kind of mistake that still surprises travelers because gate layouts change, terminals expand, and airports rarely communicate these subtle shifts clearly. In 2026, the smartest habit is to walk to your gate immediately after clearing security. Once you know exactly where it is and how long it takes to get there, everything else becomes much more predictable. It prevents that sudden, panic sprint that can turn a smooth trip into a stressful race across the terminal. Mistake 6. The outdated gate information trap. Even travelers who find their gate early in the journey can still fall into another trap that continues to cause missed flights in 2026, relying on old or unrefreshed gate information. Many people check the gate number once, often on a printed boarding pass or a screenshot saved on their phone, and assume it will stay the same. But modern airports operate with far more movement than most travelers expect. Gates are reassigned frequently, sometimes because of delays, crew adjustments, or aircraft changes, and those updates often appear only on the terminal screens. This becomes a problem when someone settles into a seat at a cafe or lounge and trusts whatever they saw earlier. Airline apps can fail to refresh if the connection drops or the phone switches to battery-saving mode, while screenshots, of course, never update at all. Meanwhile, the large screens throughout the terminal reflect real-time information, and in 2026, they remain the most accurate source for last-minute changes. I experienced this personally after a long trip in Europe. My app showed one gate, the boarding pass confirmed it, and everything seemed straightforward. But by the time I checked the airport screen again, the flight had moved to a different section of the terminal that required passing through another immigration checkpoint. The line was long, the minutes were disappearing, and the stress of making it in time grew with every step. In 2026, the simple habit of checking the terminal screens regularly can prevent this entire situation. Those glowing boards may look ordinary, but they are often the only thing standing between a calm boarding experience and a desperate, last-minute rush. Mistake 7. The boarding time confusion. Another mistake that continues to confuse travelers in 2026 is misunderstanding the difference between the departure time printed on the ticket and the actual boarding time. Many passengers still assume that arriving at the gate 15 minutes before departure is acceptable, unaware that airlines today begin closing the boarding process much earlier than that. Modern flights operate on tighter schedules, and airlines have less flexibility than they once did. Domestic flights often begin boarding 30 to 40 minutes before departure, while international flights frequently start an hour ahead. In both cases, the gate usually closes 15 to 25 minutes before the scheduled departure time. This means that a traveler who strolls toward the gate thinking they are early may arrive to find the door already shut. Once that door closes, it does not open again, no matter how close someone claims to have been. Gate agents cannot reverse the boarding process because final checks on the aircraft, security procedures, and crew communications are already in motion. I have seen travelers arrive breathless, confused, and pleading for the door to reopen, not understanding that by airport standards, they were actually late. In 2026, the simplest way to avoid this mistake is to treat the boarding time, not the departure time, as the real deadline. Some travelers set an alarm an hour before a domestic flight and 90 minutes before an international one, giving themselves enough time to reach the gate without stress. This small shift in mindset ensures you are always ahead of the schedule, instead of running desperately behind it. Mistake 8. The carry-on limit problem. After making it through security and finding their gate, many travelers in 2026 still run into a problem they never saw coming. Most economy tickets allow only 2 items, a carry-on suitcase and a personal item. But people often forget that the smallest bag still counts. Sling bags, fanny packs, small purses, and camera pouches feel like part of someone's outfit rather than an actual item, so travelers walk toward the boarding gate unaware that they are carrying a third piece. Gate agents notice these details instantly, especially with stricter enforcement and limited overhead bin space. The uncomfortable moment happens when a passenger reaches the boarding scanner and the agent stops them, pointing out the extra bag. The traveler always reacts the same way, insisting it is tiny, wearable, or unimportant. But the rule in 2026 is clear. If it is visible, it counts. What follows is a scramble, as the traveler tries to shove the small item inside their backpack or suitcase while holding up the entire line behind them. And if they cannot make everything fit, the airline may require them to check their carry-on entirely, leaving them without access to their belongings during the flight. This mistake feels small, yet it creates some of the most stressful scenes at the gate. The easiest way to avoid it is to consolidate before boarding. Keeping smaller bags inside your personal item or worn discreetly under a jacket prevents unnecessary delays and protects you from extra fees or forced gate checks. In 2026, staying one step ahead makes all the difference. Mistake 9. The airport dress code crackdown. One of the most surprising problems travelers continue to face in 2026 is being denied boarding because of their outfit. Many people assume airlines never enforce dress codes, believing that as long as they show up on time, their clothing does not matter. But several incidents over the past year have proven otherwise. In one widely discussed case, a traveler was stopped from boarding when staff considered her shorts too short. The situation escalated quickly, and even though the policies had always existed, their enforcement became noticeably stricter. Since then, airlines such as Spirit, United, and Delta have updated their guidelines to make it clear that passengers who are barefoot, wearing revealing clothing, or dressed in a way considered inappropriate may be refused boarding without compensation. Travelers rarely expect this, and the confusion becomes worse when combined with modern security procedures. Baggy layers, metal accessories, and bulky clothing set off alarms more frequently, causing travelers to be flagged for additional screening. By the time they reach the gate, they may already feel flustered, only to discover that their outfit is being questioned again. It is not about style or judgment, it is about airlines enforcing policies more tightly as travel volumes rise. In 2026, the safest approach is to choose clothing that avoids unnecessary attention at security and meets the basic expectations of the airline. A comfortable, clean, and simple outfit prevents delays, avoids extra screening, and keeps boarding smooth. What you wear might seem like a small detail, but it has become a factor that can make or break your flight. Mistake 10. The boarding zone misstep. Another mistake that continues to frustrate travelers in 2026 involves misunderstanding boarding zones. Many people crowd the gate the moment boarding begins, hoping to get on the plane early, even if their group has not been called yet. Airlines refer to this behavior as gate lice, and they have become far more strict about controlling it. Several major carriers now use automated scanners that immediately reject a boarding pass if someone attempts to board before their assigned zone. The loud beep that follows is unmistakable, and the traveler is forced to step aside in front of everyone, creating an embarrassing moment they never forget. What most passengers do not realize is that boarding zones exist for a reason. They help balance the flow of people entering the aircraft and protect the limited overhead bin space from being filled too quickly. When someone tries to board early, it disrupts that system and often leads to arguments or delays. In 2026, gate agents are trained to enforce boarding zones without exception, which means that even if a traveler is only slightly early, they will be stopped immediately. The consequences of boarding late can be just as inconvenient. Travelers who miss their zone and board later than planned may find that overhead bins near their seat are already full, forcing them to place their carry-on far away or even check it at the last minute. For anyone carrying important items, this becomes a stressful experience that could have been avoided. Understanding your boarding group and waiting until it is called keeps everything moving smoothly and prevents a small oversight from turning into an uncomfortable situation at the gate. Mistake 11. The late boarding carry-on loss. Even travelers who follow every rule can still face a frustrating problem in 2026 if they board too late, whether by accident or because they underestimated the importance of their boarding zone. By the time the final groups are called, the overhead bins near the back of the plane are often completely full. Airlines have increased the number of basic economy seats, and with more passengers carrying only hand luggage, space runs out quickly. A traveler who boards late is frequently told that their carry-on suitcase must be gate-checked, even if they packed carefully to avoid checking luggage in the first place. This situation unfolds more often than people realize. Someone might stop to buy food, use the restroom, or relax too long at a charging station, assuming they have time. But once their zone has passed and the flight is nearing departure, they walk onto the aircraft only to discover that the bins are packed tightly. The flight attendants are not being strict, they simply have no remaining space to work with. The traveler must then surrender their bag, knowing it will end up in the cargo hold and that they will not have access to anything inside during the flight. The frustration grows when the bag contains medication, electronics, or valuable items that were never meant to be out of reach. Even worse, gate-checked bags remain at risk of delays or mishandling upon arrival. In 2026, boarding with your designated zone is more important than ever, not just for convenience, but for protecting the belongings you need most. Mistake 12. The avoidable airport mistake. What becomes clear after watching travelers struggle through airports in 2026 is that nearly every frustrating moment comes from the same place, not understanding how quickly the system has changed. Each mistake, missing the check-in cutoff, relying only on a digital boarding pass, posting a boarding pass online, or wandering through the terminal without checking gate updates, happens quietly and often without warning. None of these situations are dramatic by themselves, but together they form a pattern that causes people to miss flights, lose bags, or face unnecessary stress before the journey even begins. The good news is that every one of these mistakes is avoidable with a bit of awareness and preparation. Travelers who take a few extra seconds to check in online, print a backup boarding pass, keep track of gate changes, and pay attention to boarding zones move through airports with far fewer problems. They understand that the way airports function in 2026 is different from what they remember, and they adjust accordingly. These small habits build a smoother experience and protect their trip from surprises that so many others still face. When you know what to expect, the airport becomes far less overwhelming, and the journey begins on your terms instead of the system's. Traveling in 2026 is no longer about showing up and hoping everything goes smoothly. It is about understanding how small mistakes can turn into major obstacles and how a few simple habits can keep your trip on track. When you know the rules, check the details, and stay one step ahead, the airport becomes far less stressful and far more predictable. These changes may feel subtle, but they shape every part of the journey. If you found these insights helpful, make sure to stay prepared, stay aware, and travel smarter. Safe travels, and I'll see you in the next video.